Welcome to a football show Thursday edition, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. That is Nick Suss of the Tennessean. Pay for good journalism. I am Braden Gall. Hope everybody's safe and dry this morning. Huge shout out to Nashville Severe Weather, Will and Andrew and David and all you guys. I have gotten to know Will over the years, doing interviews with him. Those folks do it all for your donations and your public safety. So shout out. Hope everybody's dry and safe after a wild night. Nick Suss, you seem very well rested. You look very handsome and ready to go. You must obviously not have children or care about the city of Nashville much, huh?
Both, I guess. No. I mean, look, I've told this people before. My true superpower in this world is when my head hits the pillow, I'm done. So
I got one of those. I got one of those. She sticks.
No fears, no anxiety. My head hit the pillow, and I woke up at like 3 a.m. to a Amber Alert type sound, and I was like, I don't care, and I went back to sleep.
Oh, so you don't care about abducted children or tornadoes, apparently.
I imagine, like, what am I going to do? Am I going to go out there and fight the tornado?
Amber Alert, who cares? She'll be fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I slept through it. It's good. Thank you for everybody staying safe, though. I think that's great.
Well, and talking to Trevor slept like a baby as well. So I knew it was coming in and was watching it, and I should have gone to bed earlier because the first wave, of course, didn't do much damage. But having spent like a long time interviewing Will Minkoff of Nashville Severe Weather, the number one thing in this city is not tornadoes; it is flooding. So be aware of what's going on today, tomorrow. Just stay on top of it. Everybody, be careful. Don't drive your car through a big puddle of water, even if you think it's shallow. Just be careful out there. And his number one piece of advice, of course, know where you are on a map. All you new folks who live in this town and haven't been here very long, know where you are on a map. There you go. D Good says, welcome to the Sus Zone. Deserved free shout out from Josh for Nashville Severe Weather. Yep. I know my kids were either in my closet or in my bed the entire night, and they haven't slept and their schools are closed. So it's going to be a great day, Nick. All right. So lots of stuff to discuss today on the show. The two major topics I want to talk about are sort of the touch point matrix is what I'm going to call it, which is a very strange thing to say out loud now that I'm saying it. But that's what Brian Callahan has been calling it, Mike Borgonzi as well for the Tennessee Titans, is all these different touch points. You got all these touch points with the player, which makes total sense. You got top 30 visits, you got combine formals, you got pro days, you got private workouts, you got Zoom interviews, and you got local visits. I want to sort of break down all of those, some of the players that have been involved in those visits. What does it tell us maybe about the Titans strategy, if there's anything at all to be learned from that as well. And then you and I are going to kind of run through our favorite late round targets. There's a couple of different positions that in particular provide great value for this team, whether they trade 1 or 35 or not. There's some really interesting prospects later in the draft at a couple of particular positions. So, Nick, I'm going to ask you for all your favorite late round targets in this draft. So we'll do that a little bit later on as well. Ed says, look at Nick's shirt, and since it's a dog eat dog world, does he have milk bone underwear on?
That's a famous Norm quote for those of you that don't get it. Rep and Cheers, which goes in with a sponsor if you want to jump right into it.
Is this the southern version of a snow day? Kind of. It is tornado season in Tennessee, so just everybody stay safe, stay dry out there. Yes, Sinkers Beverages. If you'd like to walk into a see, I already screwed it up. If you want to walk into a liquor store where everyone knows your name, sign up for the in crowd, and they'll just send you emails right there about all the great bourbon options they've got coming out. They're a fantastic sponsor, cares about you, the local folks, and in just a second, I'll tell you how much they care. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue as well. So here's the deal. We finalized our draft plans. I kind of told everybody on Monday's show with PK about this. This will be our 3rd annual charity NFL Draft Watch Party Mega Cast Stream Live event thing. And so Thursday night, we're going to have Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. We're going to have all you can eat, all you can drink. We're going to hang out at the Sinkers Beverages headquarters, the HQ, the International HQ, which is right there in Wedgwood, Houston at the Track 1 building. 3rd annual, just a great hang, a lot of fun. All the money goes to the Our Kids Foundation. Our Kids Foundation is a charity here in town, nonprofit that protects sexually abused children. I've been on the board for almost 10 years. It is a fantastic group of individuals and people doing God's work around this town. We've raised thousands of dollars for this cause through the NFL Draft Party over the last few years. Would like to continue that this year. So Thursday, Sinkers Beverages HQ. You're going to get all you can eat, all you can drink. We're going to go live. Me, Stoney, JT. We're going to go live when the Titans go on the clock. We'll give you instant analysis and have a great time that night. On Saturday, doing something a little different here. Last year, it was Friday night. This year, Saturday night. This is going to be a 4:40 Titans draft recap Q&A analog style. Off the record, no devices, no recordings, no podcasts, no live stream. You're going to get Paul Kaharski. You're going to get Nick Suss. You're going to get me, and you're going to get a couple other special guests that will remain nameless just to piss off Paul because he's frustrated that he doesn't know who the special guests are. So we're going to do that on Saturday night. There's going to be a 5-flight bourbon tasting where you're going to get special bourbons from Sinkers Beverages, and we're going to sell tickets to both of those. You can get those are linked in the show notes on YouTube, and will be on the podcast app of choice. We'll be posting them on the socials throughout the course of the next few weeks. But look, these are two companies that want to help kids. We want to have a good time around the draft. It is a great event. We've had a ton of fun the last couple of years. So why don't you buy some tickets and come on out, help the kids, and have some fun, and get to ask Paul Kaharski all the questions that you want, and then actually ask Nick Suss interesting things. Just troll Paul Kaharski and ask us nice things.
I like nice.
Okay. All right. Is that it? I think we're all tired.
Yeah, that sounds good. End of the show. We're done.
Thanks for tuning in. Nick, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you guys next time. All right, let's go into let's start first with the visits here. And I just want to know what you think. First of all, before we get into the individual players, do you have a priority rank? Is it top 30 and combine formal? And that's kind of the most important too. The other ones are kind of, the Zoom and the local and the pro day kind of is what it is. I feel like the 30 visit and the formal combine interview are the two most telling. Is that the right way to look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll put pro day in a similar tier of if you are having a actual sit down with top brass at a pro day, that probably matters. If it's a sit down with scouts, you kind of have to weight that differently. I also think that there's value in the Zoom. There's value in the local visit. The Titans have drafted players and signed UDFAs recently out of local visit and local combines. There's value in all of it. But obviously, if you are inviting somebody to the facility, that 30 visit matters more than anything else, because fundamentally what you get 15 minutes at a combine visit compared to however long you can host somebody before their flight leaves at a 30. If you have somebody in Nashville, you have to be on alert. Last year, I looked this up before we started. They drafted 3 guys who they had 30 visits with, Latham, Sweat, and Brownlee, who ended up being the 3 most contributive rookies from last year's class.
Is that a word?
It can be. I told you guys I'm allowed to make up 2 words a month. It's the rule.
2 a month? I thought it was 1 per column.
No, that's too much.
Okay. Could you put 2 into one column if you wanted to, or one story if you wanted to?
I'm sure I could. Don't want to shoot my whole shot immediately.
Sure.
I was going to say something else. But we're good.
I know where you're going to go. There's no FCC. There's no FCC on this.
I was just going to quote Arrested Development, but I didn't think people would get it.
So the 30 visits. So Abdul Carter, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Isaiah Bond, Travis Hunter, and Charles Grant are the ones that have done both a formal combine interview and a 30 visit. Then you have to add Cameron Jackson, Caleb Johnson, Deontay Thornton, Kyle Williams, Terrence Ferguson, and is it Femi Oladejo, I believe is how you say that, who also came in on a 30 visit. So those are your names of folks that are, I would guess, if you're looking at this analytically, are their top priority when it comes to analysis. Now, what are they trying to find out is a different question. If they already know so-and-so is so good that they don't need to do this, which doesn't seem like the case because it's Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, those are the 3 that they're deciding between, basically. It seems like they're clearly doing their diligence there. Are any of these names because they are concerned about something, or is it almost always just trying to confirm, get to know the player, make sure they confirm what they know?
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, just kind of starting based off of last year, they had Alt, Neighbors, and Latham in. They had 3 first-round caliber guys in for 30s. So it's not abnormal to have more than one person per round, to not just be like, well, these are the 7 guys, we're telegraphing it, or something like that. So you would expect them to do their diligence on a wide swath of players across multiple rounds. That said, yeah, everything this time of year is about confirmation. Like, there is very little, with the exception of like maybe last year when they tell the story of flying down to see Sweat the week before the draft to like get to know his family and like see that dynamic firsthand. With those like extreme exceptions where you're beyond a 30 visit, where you're beyond a virtual, where you are just like examining the person, take those aside, yeah, at this point it's confirmation. It is purely, we like what we see, we need to see it, or we have one question, let's see what it looks like. Like, it's very rarely, well, let's take a flyer. Who the hell could this be? You know what you're doing at this point.
Yeah, Ed hasn't. Well, he said 2 weeks on Monday, right? He said, "Oh, we're 2 weeks away from making a decision," which seems arbitrary, but also they're trying to stretch out the value of the pick as much as they can, and if they can get something great, they make a move. Which I'm going to get you to give me a temp check on. How confident are we that the Cam Ward is the pick? And does Amy Adams Strunk flying down on a private jet to meet with him telegraph anything? However, Ed asks a really interesting question here, and he says, what is riskier for GM's career, drafting the quarterback at 1 and he busts, or not drafting the quarterback at 1 and he turns out to be great? I don't know how. I mean, there's guys that have passed on Mahomes and Allen, but I feel like they took quarterbacks normally. And I think, was it Garrett maybe that was the pick at 1 that ended up being with other guys that year? Anyway, what's your answer to that off the top of your head, gut reaction?
I would say generally drafting a bust is a more immediate risk. If you make a decision that blows up in your face because you did something bad, it is more likely to blow up in your face than somebody else doing something good. Like, that's not to say that you won't be fired eventually for not having the quarterback, but knowing for certain you did bad at quarterback is probably a more instantly fireable offense, whereas passing on the quarterback, you still buy yourself time until you get that quarterback. Now, if you go 6 years and refuse to draft a quarterback, you'll probably get fired at a certain point. But short of that, yeah.
Well, it also might not have been negative. Like, if you trade down to 3, draft Travis Hunter, and he's an all-pro, and get an offensive tackle in the 2nd round and a receiver in the 3rd round, and they all end up being solid players, like, you still did a very good job.
Right.
So I think it's clearly drafting the busted player. I think that's the key. Afternoon from the UK, says Jake. What part of are you in London town? I'd like to know. Now that I'm an expert, I've been there once. I know everything about London. So good to hear from folks across the pond. Eddie, I think you asked about live streaming the Saturday night event. If that's what you were asking about, for those not in the city, that will not happen. That's only for folks that buy tickets and are there. Thursday's live analysis on the clock from the Sinkers Party draft charity event party will be there for sure. That will be live streamed for sure. So Eddie says, if you take Baker Mayfield over Micah Parsons, are you going to get canned over that? Probably not.
Probably not.
No,
I don't know. It's all so loose. Of you're going to get canned eventually. Like, right. It's going to happen. It's an inevitability. It's how long can you prolong the inevitable? And obviously hitting on a quarterback is going to prolong it much longer. You got a good quarterback. You got job security. But failing to get that quarterback year 1, probably not going to turn the clock on.
Yeah. Jake says, I'm outside of London. I did look at, I was looking at like Chiswick and Richmond, spent the afternoon there at the Ted Lasso bar. It's a great place. Love London. He says there's a part of me that hopes that Edbuka, Braden, and Pierce are available at 35, so we get more traction to trade down. I think there's a chance that could happen. Ozaraku, I think, is going to be there potentially as well. I think after studying him a little bit more, he's a little lighter and thinner than I expected. I think he's pretty bendy, but it's just almost way too similar to taking Harold Landry in that range as well. But, hey, Harold Landry worked out.
The name at 35 still being on the board that would make things even better is if Jackson Dart is still there. You want a quarterback to be on the board. That makes the trade value higher and higher. That's what people are going to get desperate for. If you
Well,
already have your quarterback and there's an early second rounder a la Will Levis, people are going to want to move up.
Yep, I agree. And I think Jackson Dart will be there. Tyler Shuck is apparently flying up draft boards. I thought he would be the most sort of like pro scoutable player of all the late round picks in this draft. I didn't expect him to be, a second or third round projected talent at this point. He's got some of the ability. I don't know about the makeup, the demeanor, and the injury history, but he's very, very talented, athletic, good arm. The other one, they visited with Quinn Ewers. Will Howard seems to be moving up boards as well. So maybe there's a bunch more quarterbacks taken in the second and third round than we expected. I don't know if that affects the Titans much, other than maybe it pushes some value down to 103, or to your point, creates some value at 35.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing. So I do want to, we'll get to Cam in just a second, but I feel like every conversation we've had is about Cam Ward for like three or 4 weeks straight now, which is fine. 9 or 10, if you count Travis Hunter as a receiver, different receivers on their touch point list, 5 edge players, and then you got to go 3 quarterbacks, 3 offensive linemen, 3 corners, couple tight ends, couple running backs, couple safeties. It's clear that edge and receiver are the 2 target positions that they are doing their most diligence on.
Yeah.
Which is one of the few times where I'm like, yep, that's exactly correct. That's what they care about because that's what they need. And this is a telegraph because this is the things that they need on their team to be a better football team.
Sure. Yeah, nothing really to add to that. When you have, it's interesting. I did something that was very stupid that you guys can check on the Tennessean, where I did like 100 mock draft simulators in one day. And one thing that
it's fun though.
It's really fun. One thing that I found utterly fascinating is that I used 5 different simulators, and 3 of the 5 simulators did not seem to think the Titans need receiver or edge rush talent as a primary need. Of like, there was a recurring theme where with the second round pick and the 2 fourth round picks, the computer was just like, they need everything, best player available. So it was a lot of interior defensive linemen. It was a lot of guards and tackles. It was a lot of stuff that they've already seemed to address. So they're just like, Titans just need to get better. And like, somebody's programming these computers to think that. So there still is kind of a perception about this team from the people who aren't around every day of like, go get Walter Nolan if he's at 35. You already have Sweat. Who cares? Go get somebody who might be better. Go get Donovan Jackson at 35. I know you just spent big money on a tackle and big money on a guard, but go get another one. Like, I understand the logic here that kind of, I feel like there is this national perception that, oh yeah, just get the best player available. Just make the team better. But these touch points that you're talking about, they are clearly leaning toward 2 positions over everything else.
And if you go to the Tennessee and you can read this guy, Nick Suss's grades of the current roster based on draft need, and you have edge, receiver, and quarterback as the 3 most needy positions. That seems way too logical, Nick Suss of the Tennessee.
Yeah, I don't think that anyone will dispute the fact that this team probably needs to get better at the 3 most important positions on the field. Like, we can quibble about whether offensive tackle is more important than wide receiver at this point.
But they
might be, it might not be. But
they just almost spent $100. They just spent $100 million on those 2 positions.
Agreed. I'm talking about the defense of the comments absolutely crushing me for calling those the 3 most important positions on the field. But
gotcha.
I would argue that at the very least 3 out of the 4 most important positions, and they're not very deep or good at them. So yeah, go get them. Go.
Did you also? Yeah, I agree. Did you also do the same thing PK did, where you do the AI mock draft and then it just like took your mock draft? Is that what happened?
We don't need to lean too much into this, but about a week before Paul's article went up, I tried it 5 different times and it gave me my same mock draft all 5 times. So I think if you are somebody who reads the Tennessean more frequently than you read paulkaharski.com or vice versa, the AI software will be like, oh, you like the Tennessean? Here's what the Tennessean said, but now it's AI. So yeah, don't do AI mock drafts. They're very silly. I did
because
one.
An AI mock draft is so through the looking glass.
Yeah. And it's also like, I did one where it's like, first round pick, you know who the Titans should take? Olu Fashanu. Like, probably can't do that. And then it's like, second round pick, you know who the Titans should take? Joe Alt. I'm like, well, that doesn't even make sense. Why are you doing both of them and in that order? And also, neither are available. And then it was like, third round pick. And I'm like, the Titans don't have a third round pick, but tell me who they should get. And it's like, Georgia linebacker Jaheed Campbell. And I'm like, that's not real. That's wrong. That's incorrect.
That's
At
not a
least he's
person.
draft eligible this year. And then it was like, fourth round pick. You know who they should get? And it gave me a cornerback who played at Washington in 2017 and hasn't played an organized snap in 6 years. And I'm like, okay.
Fifth round, Peyton Manning. I think he's a good player.
Seventh round, I'm not joking. Seventh round, Brock Bowers.
Oh my God, good value.
Yeah,
I mean,
no. If the Titans can get Pro Bowl tight end Brock Bowers in the seventh round, good job. Great
record
job.
Record-setting tight end / rookie pass catcher Brock Bowers. Oh man, it's so because a mock draft in and of itself is already just a human guessing. So now this is computer learning about human guesses and spitting out. It's just so great. It's so great. I thought it was great that both of you did the exercise and you got the same exact thing basically out of the deal. So it was so
moral of the story here: do your own mock drafts.
Yeah.
The future cannot be. These are not crystal balls. I'm gonna be happy if I get 2 picks right on my final Titans mock draft, and like we're all gonna be happy if we get 2 picks right.
Oh, 2 is like batting 1,000 almost if you get 2 picks correct. Jarvis, I will say this, and shout out to Zach Lyons, of course, who a lot of these numbers are coming from his Twitter account. But last year, he and I, and he was a little ahead of me on this. Jarvis Brownlee was somebody we talked about all build up to the draft. He was a guy that we thought we liked. We thought the Titans liked. Position of needs, the style of player, all of that stuff was one of those players that Stoney was talking about, Zach was talking about, we were talking about on this show. And so every now and then, we talked about Sweat a lot as well. But it's just, what's interesting about doing the mock drafts, like dozens of them, if you do it like on whatever, is it Pro Football Network? I think one of those. It's like the best one to do.
Focus, Pro Football Network. I will tell you, ESPN just unveiled theirs. It is the slowest moving one. But it comes out with the results that make me feel, hey, that feels accurate. It has the fewest. I did one on PFF where I'm not joking. In the 100 simulations, one of them had the Titans take Abdul Carter at 1. Guess who they picked with 35?
Donovan Ozaraku.
Cam Ward.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, here's what I find interesting. First of all, it's just fun to play around with if you have the first pick because you can play around. What's fun about it for 2 things? I think there's 2 value points for me. One is you can play with overarching strategy at no cost other than your own time commitment.
Yeah.
Which one of the ones that I like doing is trading out of the first pick and just drafting all defense and seeing what you can do to fix your entire defense in like one draft class in one weekend. Because you have a couple of really nice pieces with Sweat and with a really good defensive line. You trade down, you get Abdul Carter or Jalen Walker or Michael Williams, and you come back and you get Carson's why can I never remember Schwessinger, like a bona fide all over the field Mike linebacker to fix that position. You come back and you get Landon Ransom in the 3rd round or something like that because you've traded down. You go grab you can fix your entire defense and still draft like a receiver and a tight end and a running back and an offensive lineman. And so number one, it's playing with strategy. It's like, okay, if I take Cam Ward, what does that do to the rest of my draft class? If I don't take Cam Ward, what does that do? If I trade to 3 or to 6, if I trade to 12, it gives you a feel for what you can try to accomplish. I agree. There's times where players drop and you're like, that's not going to happen. Or you get offered a trade and you're like, that's not going to happen. So I understand all of that, but like it does give you a sense to have fun with sort of the strategy. The other one is ranges of which players are going to be available. And the number of drafts I've done, not a single one is, for example, Jack Besh or Jalen Knoll available at 103. I have not had a single time where I've done one of those mock drafts where one of those 2 players is available at 103, which tells me when I see Kyle Williams and Deontay Thornton on their 30 visit list, that they are trying to find a receiver they can take at 103. That's what that tells me a little bit about. And those are 2 names that largely we have liked, you, me, the group, whatever, at that position at that point in the draft. So you can kind of get a feel for where a player might be available and where he's definitely not going to be available. And I think 103 is the position that you can really learn about when you do these things. And none of it is, of course, for real. Obviously, it's all just, but you can kind of you can kind of gain some insight as to where you think things might shake out with that process.
Yeah. And just cleaning up one of these comments here, Ed, you're talking about the Cam Ward comps. I will have a story on that early next week. So if you want to keep an eye out to Tennessean of how people compare Cam Ward to people, we'll have something coming. So
it's gonna be a ton of fun.
He's there
again. I think he's Baker Mayfield. Like from a talent perspective, if he's better than Baker Mayfield, you have to take him. If he's worse than Baker Mayfield, you should not take him and you should trade. I think he's has a very similar. He's a little bit taller and a little bit bigger, but I think he plays a very similar game. He likes to take risks. He's more athletic than you think, and he's a moxie leader that likes to put everybody else on blast in the locker room in a positive way at times. So I just think he's very Baker Mayfieldy. Mayfield's a little bit more like Gumby. Like, Baker's a little bit more like goofy about his movements, but otherwise I think he's very Baker Mayfieldy. I think I don't. Yeah. The accuracy off platform down the field is not Patrick Mahomes. It's not Aaron Rodgers. It's not that quality yet, but we'll see. What'd you make of Callahan's comments to, I think it was Kevin Clark of ESPN, talking about going back and studying their Zoom interviews with Joe Burrow and how Joe Burrow wasn't the fully formed Joe Burrow at the time, which is common sense. Really interesting conversation that Callahan had with Clark. What do you make of those comments? And this will lead us directly into, what percentage are we at this week that they're taking Cam Ward at number 1?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the percentage. I have seen no indications that I should change from where I was last week. Since we're getting closer, since every day that the pick does not get traded is another day the pick doesn't get traded, I will boost it up to about 80. I think I was at 75 last week, and I'll boost it to about 80 this week. But it makes sense. It's good comparison point. But the one thing everybody has said about Joe Burrow since the day Joe Burrow got to LSU, so I've heard a lot about him from the time he got to LSU, is he's just different in the room. That when you talk to him, he's just different. So if you're expecting Cam Ward to be like the guy who has probably the only person who has credibly been compared to Tom Brady when it comes to demeanor and attitude talking about football,
stoicism,
you're probably not going to see too much. I don't think he's looking for similarities. He's probably looking for what worked, what didn't, what strategies can we bring up to test these people. But if you are talking about prepping truly of how can we compare him to Joe Burrow, that's probably an unfair comparison. Not to say that Ward can't be that good as a player. He's just a different kind of, he gets to what he does differently than Burrow does.
Yeah. And I did not think that he was implying there's some sort of comparison. I think that what Callahan was very clearly saying was some of it was like, I'm going to go back and reevaluate my own experiences and how I experienced those conversations, because it was during COVID and it was he said, I think he said, my only memory of Joe Burrow is like the player that he's become. And I needed to go back and refresh myself on what he was at the time of being drafted, which again is, for the record, way better than almost every other quarterback who's coming out of college at the number 1 pick. Record-setting offense, national champion, Heisman Trophy winner, all the intangibles. There was a small question about arm strength, which ironically is not a question for Cam Ward, for Joe Burrow coming out. But I agree. It's about, let me go back and analyze what I did. Where did I get it right? Where did I think I saw something and maybe that was wrong? And then honestly, it's about how much a player can. What did we see in Joe at the time that led us to believe that he would be able to progress and evolve? Because progressing and evolution seems to be a very big talking point for Callahan about Cam Ward, both in college and what's going to happen when he gets to the NFL. Is, can he continue to make progress in the particular areas that matter most to Brian, which is processing and accuracy?
Yeah. And it's funny because I'll talk from my perspective. When Burrow was coming out, my main concern about him was, he holds on to the ball too long, he's going to get crushed, which is a similar thing that comes up about Cam Ward. I'm less concerned about Cam Ward getting crushed than I was about Joe Burrow getting crushed. I think he's a little bit stockier to a point that my injury concerns aren't quite as high. And maybe that's hindsight bias of I've seen Joe Burrow get hurt quite a few times, not necessarily as always as functions of him holding onto the ball too long. But that play style of extreme confidence bordering on cockiness in the pocket of I can hold it another split second, somebody's going to get open.
Yep.
actually is something that I see shared between these two prospects.
Totally agree. So I think I've worked my way. Every week it's about a 10 to 15% swing. Like at the combine, I kind of went into it going like 80-20 trade. And then coming out of the combine, I was like, okay, like 65-70% trade. Then a week later, it gets to about 50-50. And then it's 60-40 Cam. And now I think I'm at the 70-75% Cam Ward is the pick. I still think, and this is where we can ask you, make sure you, Sinkers Beverages, first round draft party at their HQ. Tickets are available right now for you, a football show audience. I'm not posting those on social. I'm giving them to you guys first. I want first come, first serve. There's only like 20-25 slots in the room because it's not big enough. We're going to have a lot bigger event on Saturday, so make sure you check out that. All you can eat, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue's catering it. All you can drink. Going to be a ton of fun. Going to watch the draft and have some fun. Do a live show with Stoney's going to be there. JT's going to be there. We're going to have a lot of fun, and so we'll see what happens. Make sure you check out those tickets. Available in the show notes on the podcast app and on YouTube as well. I think what's interesting then is now we've got this, these conversations around the value of the first pick, basically saying, franchise quarterback, Paul and I talked about this on Monday. A franchise quarterback is basically priceless. An offer is going to have to, knock them out of their seats to be the thing that they would accept. Again, could this be smokescreen? Could this be positioning to trade down? I don't know. Seems less and less likely as we go on, to your point. What do you make of the plane and the Amy Adams Strunk being down there? That's the one thing that feels like it's just a little bit more indicative of the commitment level. All the other stuff is just sort of standard operating procedure, but the owner flying down to meet with the prospect, that doesn't happen a lot with prospects. Very often.
That's a good indicator. I can't really expand too much on it. That's a good indicator. That is something that seems like they are turning over every stone for Cam Ward, which is what we've been saying since February. Like nothing at this point is surprising that they are moving toward drafting him. Obviously people can back out, people can change, but none of this they're going through the paces. They're not surprised.
I will say this. I don't think Amy Adams Strunk flying down on a private jet, which I don't think she flies commercial, guys. So I think everywhere she flies is probably on a private jet. I don't think meeting with the owner is turning over stones. Amy Adams Strunk is not going to, pull something out of him that the coaching staff and the GM haven't, or, she's going to be like, well, I really don't, I think he holds onto the ball too long in the pocket, guys. Like that's not what she's
7 out route against NC State. You were late. Yeah.
that Y2, that spider Y2 banana, he just doesn't run that route. She's there to talk PR, to talk who you are as a person, to get to know this person. If I'm going to invest in you, I need to get to know you a little bit more. She's not turning over stones. She's more of a formality, I feel like, which makes it interesting to me more so than anything else. So there you go. That's the week. Ed says, when I get to 80%, they'll trade for Cousins. That would be funny. Next week, 85%, it's Cam Ward. The next day, trade for Kirk Cousins. All right. Let's jump into some of these names we like later in the draft.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go position by position. So here's the rules I put on Nick and on myself. On the mock, what is it? Consensus mock rankings, which is a website that's got basically every player ranked, which I guess takes one of the few times AI is actually probably good. It scrapes the internet for every single ranking and puts a consensus big board together. It has to be ranked. This player has to be ranked outside of the top 100. So it's an option at 103. And I kind of wanted you to give me kind of different tiers, like a sleeper and then a deep sleeper. So it's sort of like a mid-round target and a late-round target from each of these positions. We're going to kind of probably 5 or 6 positions here we'll go through, and I just want a handful of names. I'm not limiting you to 1, 2, 7, whatever. If you really like certain positions and you want to go longer on those guys, Nick, feel free. So let's start on offense here, and we'll start at receiver because it's the one that we all like the most, and it's the most interesting, and it's fantasy football and all this other stuff, and we know they've talked to 9 of them. Give me a guy you like at 103 or in that range, sort of the mid-round sleeper, and then give me the guy you like late in the draft.
103, I'm picking somebody who I feel like we've gone full circle on. Of the hate cycle has come to a point where it's like, oh no, 103, that's incredible value, and that's Restrepo. I feel like when people were talking about Restrepo at 35, that was like, whoa, ease off, guys. Not a right idea. But if Restrepo's there at 103, that is a type of player the Titans have not had in a long time. I'm not even talking from the Cam Ward chemistry aspect of it, which comes up with him, which comes up with Kyle Williams, all of that stuff. I'm just talking about pure go get a guy who's going to catch 8 to 12-yard passes. Like that precision, that ability to be the extension of the running game, the quick passing game that Callahan likes. I think that would be very helpful at 103. At 35, when people were talking about it in February, that's not good value. Don't go do that. But 103, I kind of like it at this point.
So a couple observations. I do love Easton. I love you, Easton. I love all of your content right now being like the assumption that Cam Ward is the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. Like, should they draft Kyle Ward and reunite him, Kyle Williams with Cam Ward? Should they draft Xavier Restrepo and Elijah Arroyo to reunite them with Cam Ward? Like, it's already happened that he's the quarterback. First of all, you broke my rule. Xavier Restrepo is number 90 in the
is he? I'm sorry.
So he's inside the top 100. So you already failed. The name I like there, if you're talking dropping, like guy could fall. Obviously, you guys know I love Jalen Knoll. I don't think he's going to be available. Jalen Royals, though, could be available at 103. If he falls, that's a name out of Utah State that I would keep an eye on.
They're very opposite players in that Restrepo might be the most polished and Royals might be the least polished. It comes down to coaching. Can you get stuff out of Royals? I think you can, obviously, but you need to coach him up a lot. I
think Restrepo is a little too much Kyle Phillips one-trick pony. I think he's got really good hands, and he was a very productive player. I get it. I'm a little, to your point, he's always been in the second and third round, and I'm like, I don't see it there. The two that and this is a cop out, but these were the two I had before they were reported, Easton and Tehran, on their 30 visits with Kyle Williams from Washington State and Deontay Thornton from Tennessee. Because what happens is you get to Restrepo and Tez Johnson right around that 100 mark, and it disappears. It just the talent falls off a map. So you're trying to find skill sets that you like, and Thornton is big and fast, and was not used all that well by Nico Iamaleava last year because he was continually missing him, and the rest of the receivers didn't help him. So I think Thornton's better than his numbers. The problem with Thornton in general is that he's been this 5-star elite athlete his entire career. I think he went to Oregon, right, and then transferred, and he's never really put it all together. Best season last year. There's a lot of upside there. Kyle Williams, I think, is a better player, is a more polished player, but both of them should be available in theory at 103. Yeah. So I think those are two names that I would look at. All right, who do you like deep in the draft? Deep sleeper. Don't say Sam Brown.
No. I've talked about him before, but I like Ricky White. I like the go do everything ability of the guy who led college football in kicks blocked last year. Like, you're getting an effort guy, you're getting a motor guy, you're getting probably a upgraded version of what you expected Colton Dowell to be. Of you start him out as a gunner and you can hope he can be a number 4 and you can work his way up. He's played for Nick Holtz before at UNLV, which I believe Kyle Williams also did. Am I remembering that right? I like Ricky White. I think that if you can get him in the 6th or 7th, that is a good value pick right there.
What's funny is he was mocking around right before the combine. It was his highest point in the consensus mock. Like, he was in like the 120s, which is where we just talked about Thornton and Williams, and now he's down to like 210. So I wonder if that's the rest of the world catching up to the fact that he's more of a 6th or a 7th round pick. Because I've always kind of mentioned him and the Nash kid out of San Jose State as guys that I like late. I like the kid out of Virginia Tech, Jalen Lane. I think he could be an interesting player. Kind of if you're going 6th, 7th round, like really late, he's number 215 in the mock. So I think that's a guy you could get late. The one I think is kind of gaining some ground is Keandre Lambert-Smith out of Auburn. I think that's a player that's sort of gaining some speed and some steam as a late round sleeper. Had some big plays for Auburn. A dynamic player. I think he could be, again, if you're taking a flyer on a 6th or 7th round pick, I like Lambert-Smith out of Auburn as well. But I like the other guys better. I like White and I like Lane better as well. So it's hard to find receivers. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say way deep. Zachary Franklin. You have a lot of upside. You just got to figure out what the heck happened these last 2 years. Like, he looked like a potential 1st-round pick 3 years at UTSA, and then 2 years in the Power 5, he completely disappeared. You got to figure out what's going on there. But there's something interesting with Zachary Franklin.
Brew McCoy's got a lot of athletic ability. He's got to stay healthy out of Tennessee. If he's healthy, then maybe. Theo Weiss is pretty solid as a guy that's like like in the top 300. He's a name to keep an eye on. I don't want anything to do with Arian Smith. He's fast, and that's about it. I don't
Top
want
of
anything
my
to do
do
with him
not
there.
draft list.
Yeah, exactly. And number 260 is Sam Brown, who they did have, I believe they met with at the combine. So that's a Miami receiver that no one's really talking about, that the Titans have, in fact, had a quote-unquote touch point with. So there you go. The receivers are hard to find quality talent after about that 103 pick. You probably have to go early on one of your guys at 103, and then after that, you're throwing a shot in the dark, a dart there in the fourth, in the seventh round, fourth quarter of the draft, as it were. Tight ends. Outside of the top 100, who are some sleeper tight ends that you really like?
None. I've got some written down just to pretend, but I am not super high on the tight ends in this draft. If Ferguson's outside the top 100, I can't remember. He's probably the top of the crop there.
I did not count Ferguson or Helm because they're 98 and 103, but if either of them are available at 103, I think they're very real options.
Yeah. Beyond that, I've heard some good things about Thomas Fidone from Nebraska. He's a real late round guy. Prescorn has some value as a kind of like traditional 1990s tight end who can run that pop route and block. Beyond that, yeah, I know people keep telling me this is a deep tight end class that we should all like. I don't like this tight end class. I am not excited by anybody.
I think it's deep, like in the top 10 of the position. I think they're all really good. Because again, Ferguson and Helm could be tight end 7 or 8 off the board. And I think Ferguson could be the third tight end in this class. So I think the top 7 or 8 guys are really, really good guys. And I think the Titans staff has backed that up. But JT, you stole my thunder, JT. So Jake Brenningstool is interesting. He's more of a slot guy. He's not a true 3-down guy, but I think you could use him in passing situations. What I keep coming around to is Jackson Haas, who went to Yale, I believe, and then transferred to Georgia Tech because they ran a 12 personnel set, which is what he said to us at the combine. I find that fascinating. But what's interesting about him is not only is he a 3-down tight end, but he might also do the thing that neither of the other 2 tight ends do. And if you've got Wiley and Chig still on the team, what did Vanette do better than both of them? He was a better blocker. And so I think if you look at what Haas does out of Georgia Tech, he's number 159, so maybe you can get him in the 6th round, maybe later. I think he does fall because he's not super dynamic, but he's a really smart player. He's a really tough player. He's one of those guys, like, he's just going to be where he's supposed to be at all times and probably do his job. And if you want somebody like that late in the draft to supplement with Chig and Josh Wiley to let them make more plays, I could see them going that direction. But I really like Jackson Haas as well. So JT stole my thunder there.
I'll just go ahead and let you guys know. May 3rd or whatever the first show we're doing after the draft, if the Titans drafted a tight end, I will be grading it as a bad pick because there is nobody in this draft who I feel like will be enough surplus value at that position to justify picking it over much more important positions that have much more pressing needs.
All right,
Chig and Wiley are not superstars, but they are good enough when you have gigantic holes everywhere else.
ZD, not flashy, but Jackson Haas to fill the Nick Vanette role. You're killing me with the Harold Fannin Jr. buzz. See, here's the deal. Okay, let's have a conversation about this. Because this is the beauty of the mock draft thing where you can just do so many that you can try every strategy. If you trade back to 7, 10, 11, 12, again, unlikely that it happens. But if you do that and give yourself extra picks, what you are allowing is more horizontal movement on your board. And what you are allowing is, I'm going to allow myself to think about Tyler Warren. That's what you allow yourself to do, or Malachi Starks. Positions kind of need. But here's the difference in the tight end situation than the safety or linebacker or any of these other guys. They function in Callahan's offense, which he doesn't like to use tight ends. But in an offense, it can function just like a receiver. And if you're giving a backup quarterback or Will Levis or a rookie quarterback that you're taking later in the draft an elite weapon, a 10-year Pro Bowl option at tight end, you could do a lot worse. That is a way better war over Chig and Wiley than you're making it out to be.
Sure. I just don't think you're making your team better. It's a luxury pick at a point where this team doesn't have luxury. Like, you are going out and getting a player who, I will be direct. I do not think Tyler Warren is Brock Bowers. I know some people do. I do not believe he is.
He's a different type of player.
I don't think he will have Brock Bowers type impact on the game. I do not think he will have George Kittle or Travis Kelce or that level of changes the game. Even Trey McBride. Maybe that's the tier you can put him in. If you pick him when you don't have a number 2 receiver, when you don't have a pass rusher, when you don't have a friggin' quarterback, what are we doing?
But it only makes sense if you've got other picks to make all of those things happen.
Sure.
That's the only way that makes sense. You get a first-round pick next year to go after your quarterback. You get an extra second-round pick to draft your receiver. You get an extra second-round pick to draft your edge. You get a third-round pick to draft, somebody else, that, offensive lineman that you think is of value in that slot. It's about the other things that you get with Tyler Warren. And I think Warren is a better blocker than a lot of those players you just named, Kelce and some of these other guys. I think he's a complete player. He's not Brock Bowers. He's not a dynamic guy that's going to stretch the field or change your passing attack. But he is an all-around 3-down player that absolutely makes your team better. But very low percentage chance he's on the Tennessee Titans.
Sure. Yeah, we're fighting about something very, very
well, I think it's more about the strategy of taking a tight end, and that you're like sort of automatically going to grade that as not a value pick when if you get a player that functions in the offense as a number 2 pass catcher, that's like taking a second receiver if all the receivers are gone by pick 103, right?
Sure, but I don't think of any time in Callahan's career as a coach where they've used a tight end as a number 2 receiver.
I hear you. They had a lot of talented tight ends at Cincinnati, and they didn't really use them a lot. So I don't disagree with you. All right, offensive line. I'm going to lump all 3 positions together here. Okay. Do you think that center and guard is the more likely focus, or do you think tackle is still very much a priority for this team based on age and investment?
I mean, that kind of comes down to, at this point, to bring up a name that I don't think we've said on the show since November. It comes down to what people think about Jalen Duncan. Like, is Jalen Duncan good enough to be your 4th tackle? If not, you consider drafting somebody. If so, go get an interior guy, because you're going to have a more pressing need at the starting job eventually there. I would probably prefer, if you're going offensive line this draft, to find an interior guy who you can have learn behind Zeitler for a year and maybe push into that role eventually. But if you can get somebody who is that kind of guy at tackle, try it. Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of good tackles at 35 or thereabouts. So if you want to trade down and go more premium and get Josh Connerly or Ariante Ursary or some other bunch of other guys in that 2nd round and 3rd round, you can do it. If you're talking outside of the top 100 on the consensus mock, Anthony Belton at NC State's number 100 on the dot. He could be available at 103. That doesn't feel right. Tackle with your 3rd pick in the draft, if you don't trade, doesn't feel right. Jalen Rivers at Miami, I'm a big fan of his. Again, that's more of a 5th round pick. That's why I feel like it's maybe okay to go tackle there. But really, I like the interior guys. Miles Frazier, Seth McLaughlin. I know he's coming off the injury out of Ohio State. And Clay Webb. Those are the 3 names that I like a lot out of LSU, Ohio State, and Jacksonville State. Clay Webb was an preseason All-American. Preseason All-American at a school, Jacksonville State. And he's gone on to do great things. So those 3 guys, if you can get them late, any one of those 3 guys, I think, gives you opportunity to sort of bolster both your center and your guard position for the foreseeable future. I like all 3 of those guys. Who you like, Nick?
I had Miles Frazier as the one written down. I like him a bunch. I think he's a little bit underrated at this point. And then I truly can't remember if this guy's in more the 5th round range or the 6th round range. But as a tackle guard hybrid type, like Joe is referring to, who I think probably slots in more as a guard, I like Joshua Gray out of Oregon State. 4 or 5 year starter, has a lot of experience playing inside and outside. I like him as a developmental player who could maybe be that right guard someday, but also could just be a swing player that helps this team the way Brunskill or Radens did a couple years ago.
Very much 158 on the consensus, so same kind of range you're talking about there. Is that kind of 5th round slot there?
Yeah.
I like, at least for now, maybe this class, I don't know about next year, the coaching staff that was at Oregon State that developed Fuaga last year and developed these guys this year. That's a really well-coached, well-developed Oregon State football roster over the last 4 years. And I like that offensive line was about mauling. It was about physicality. It was about toughness. I like the guys coming out of Oregon State. I don't know about next year because that guy is now coaching at Michigan State, but that roster is still. I like some of those players this year. All right, let's see here. Let's take some questions here. Ed says, outside of the first pick, do you think this is a draft that's focusing on one side of the ball, perhaps rationalizing go all D and make the unit strength of the team? I think if you don't take Cam, you can trade back and make the defense one of the top 5 defenses in the league. I think you can do it. Is that the way to find success right away or build a championship team? I don't know. And I certainly don't think they're going to do that. And you and I, Nick, have already talked about if you take Cam, do you then come back and prioritize offensive line, tight ends, running backs, receivers with your next picks, or do you fill the hole at edge, which is the most glaring hole? That's still up for debate. So.
Yeah. I would say that if they are going to lean one side of the ball, it would probably make more sense to lean offense than defense, just because your defense is a little more complete as is. But I do understand the justification of go strengthen the strong unit and say, we'll help Cam out next year. Let's go win with defense this year and hope that we can play ball control. It's an okay strategy, but I truly think they're just going to go need, and then best available after that.
This I feel really strongly about because we're about to get to some of these positions. I don't think you can make your defense significant. Talking about sort of the tight end value over replacement, right? I don't think you can make the defense significantly better by drafting a bunch of players in rounds 4, 5, and 6. I think you can make your offense with running backs, tight ends, and guards, which is where those guys get drafted. You can find a contributing running back, a contributing guard, and a contributing tight end in those rounds and make Cam Ward's job better and easier on offense. And let's just be very clear, to your point, the offense was way worse. much worse at their jobs than the defense was at its job last year. For whatever, just for what that's worth. All right, running back here. All right, where you going running back here?
Ollie Gordon. I like Ollie Gordon. That's my 4th or 5th round. And then later, I've liked the idea of Khalil Mullings for quite a while now. Of just, if you can get him in the 6th round, a bruiser who is going to play 3rd and 2 and shorter, who can be a backup option on 1st and 10 when you need a bigger body on the field in short distance. He is not going to be the pass catching threat and not going to be the burst in the open field guy. But if you can get a guy who's going to weigh in at 220, 230, and who's going to bruise his way for 3 yards, I like that. I like that.
How about this? I was talking to one of his position coaches the other day, and says that he might be better than Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, all the other players on the team. That it's what's between the ears that makes him so good, and that my comp for him is Damian Harris.
Okay.
I think he could be a Damian Harris type of player. He's not going to be elite. He's not going to be a star, but he could be pretty productive in certain situations and maybe have like a 6 to 8 year career. I really like him as well. Honestly, I love all these players at this position. It's fantastic. When you see headlines on fantasy websites that are like historic influx of rookie talent in fantasy ranks, like, you got a good class. I've got Damian Martinez and Ollie Gordon as my top 2 that are sort of higher up the board. Again, outside of the top 100. You're not targeting a running back with the 4th round pick. They've done that way too many times in the 3rd round the last few years, last 6 drafts or 7 drafts. What is it? Darrington Evans, Tajay Spears, and why am I drawing a blank on the other? Haskins was an earlier pick than you think. Rocket Sanders, yes, Z Dean out of Arkansas / South Carolina, really good player. Jarquez Hunter at 178 is a really interesting player. Woody Marks at USC can catch passes and runs at like 225 between the tackles, so he's interesting. But the guy I like, and I think the Titans like him too, is LaKeith Allen out of Syracuse. I would keep an eye on him. Not as big a frame. He's not like a 230 guy, but he plays between the tackles downhill. So Damian Martinez, Ollie Gordon are the 2 I love, and I'm always drafting if they fall in the 5th round. I love Jarquez Hunter as a really late pick, and then Allen is a super, super late pick.
The mock draft simulators, for what it's worth, Kyle Monangai was the 3rd most commonly picked Titan out of my 100 simulations. It went Cam Ward 1, Ty Felton 2, and then Kyle Monangai out of Rutgers. So the computers have their pick. It is the Rutgers running back.
Let's go linebacker here then, because we're getting a little long on this show. I apologize. Linebacker, who you got?
I've gone on my Jay Higgins tirade before. I like him. I like Jay Higgins. I like a guy who's just going to be productive at always being around the football. But if you want to get real abstract here, I've got a late sleeper, potential UDFA sleeper who could work out at linebacker for this team. Why not see if Dericky Wright can play linebacker?
You broke up there. Say that name again.
Dericky Wright.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, why not? He's like 6'4", 230 at safety. Why not see if he can play linebacker? Why not give him a try?
You already got one of those, James Williams.
Just again, if it's a UDFA, if it's a late round pick, if the team is somebody who is willing to be that kind of experimental at linebacker, here's a guy who I think can do that, and he's local, and it'd be a nice story for us to write.
This is the problem with young people. JT wasn't clearly listening at all to what you said when he says the computer took who in the second round. That is not what Nick said. Nick said the players that the computers took the most often in his 100 drafts were Cam Ward, Ty Felton, and who from Rutgers?
Kyle Monangai.
There you go. Had nothing to do with the second round pick, JT. Thanks for listening. I have Jay Higgins down as well, 172 overall. I think you can get him pretty late. I've seen him go in the 6th and 7th round, most mock drafts. So target him in the 5th, maybe if you want him. If Barrett Carter is available at 103, I think that's something you seriously have to consider. I think he's the last sort of like true starting linebacker on the board in this class. I think he could be a 3-down starting linebacker from the beginning. And so I think he's kind of the last one. I don't, again, like running back and tight end, I don't love that pick there at 103 if you haven't already traded, 35 and then gotten another 3rd round pick and taken a receipt, like all that stuff. I said this guy to you guys, JT, all you guys in Mobile. Jeffrey Bassa out of Oregon is the guy I like in that 100 range. He was basically the fastest and most explosive running linebacker at the Senior Bowl. He did play behind a couple of really big, talented defensive linemen, and that is always something you want to ask about. But I like him. I like Small Munden as well. Maybe the best coverage linebacker in this draft class. I think he's somebody that they're targeting. If they can get him in the 4th round, maybe the 5th round, I think he's absolutely somebody they would take. But I like Bassa a lot. And then I've got Jay Higgins at 172 as well. Safety, that's another really important position here. And again, linebacker and safety are two that you can get in the 5th round. You can get a quality 3rd linebacker and a quality 3rd safety that will probably contribute to your team if you do it right in the 5th round with those two picks.
Yeah, call me predictable, but I like Nick Saban safeties. I'll take Malachi Moore in the 5th if he's around. That just seems like a good thing. I've heard a lot of praise for Malachi Moore out of people in Tuscaloosa. He's a guy who will be that kind of 8 to 10 year vet who is getting that 2-year, $8 million contract every 2 years to just renew, play 17 games, finish with 90 tackles and 2 picks. Just like
Xavier Woods, mate. It's like
exactly
Xavier Woods.
what the Titans have with Xavier Woods.
Right,
and so
exactly.
if you can develop that, I don't think he's going to be an all-pro. He might not ever be a Pro Bowler, but he is going to be incredibly plug-and-play productive with that Saban safety mentality.
I have a feeling that Billy Bowman out of Oklahoma, Jonas Sanker out of Virginia, Jalen Reed out of Penn State, all three are like 121, 132, 146. If you're looking for someone in the 4th round that could fall to you, or the 5th round, I think one of those 3 might fall to you. And all 3 of those are interesting. Z-Dean says Hunter Wohler. I could be on board with Hunter Wohler. Not an elite athlete. It's not going to run around in space and make plays, but he's big. He's physical, great tackler. You could do a lot worse than him in the 7th round because he's like, that's where he's at. I think he's in the 220s, 230s. And then Malachi Moore is in the 180s, which you might be able to. I think he's always somebody that I've been targeting in these mock drafts as well. Yeah. Bowman's a little bit undersized, but it's just all over the place. I like him a lot. Reed is really interesting to me.
Reed, another one who I would like to see maybe play linebacker.
Yeah, he's a big player for sure. All right. I've got Quincy Riley and Za Frazier as my corners, sort of in that early 100 range. Keep an eye on those two guys. And then I think Jalen Smith out of USC is going to move up boards a little bit and might be a late round target. 4-4 guy at corner. Don't. There's a chance that corner could be something they do late in the draft as a depth piece for sure.
And I did not prepare any cornerbacks.
Yep.
So
yeah, I didn't ask you to do that. So, all right, I'm going to throw out 2 names that I really like that are not a part of this exercise, that are late guys that I want to see what you think. Riley Mills got hurt for Notre Dame, and I know it's a luxury position, but I think he is way better and more talented than where he is going to be drafted. AKA, I just think it's a really good value. And if Sebastian Joseph Day is going to be gone at the end of the year, or Jones is gone at the end of the year, I'm saying after this upcoming season, and you're starting to restock the cupboard a little bit, Riley Mills, I think late in the draft is going to outperform his draft stock, almost guaranteed. And so he's a name I'm always finding myself gravitating towards. Number one, what do you think of Riley Mills?
I like it. I think that he is somebody who, if you are trying to add depth at a position where you're already pretty stout, he can come in and be a number 4 interior lineman with potential to be a 2 or 3 someday. I like the option.
No pressure to be great.
Yeah.
A couple years, all of a sudden, maybe you got to do something with Simmons. You've got a replacement there with Sweat and Mills. Not crazy to think about, especially in a class with the defensive tackle class is so good in this class. And then, of course, I can't do a show without talking about Kyle McCord, who I still think might be the best quarterback in the draft class. Not named Cam Ward.
I was talking to a fairly prominent former NFL quarterback the other day, who you will see quoted in a couple of stories coming in the week, so I won't spoil it. But he was telling me that the most fun he had watching college football this year were the Miami-Louisville game and the Miami-Syracuse game. Just watching Cam Ward versus Shuck, Cam Ward versus McCord, watching those guys throw. He said he thought the Syracuse game was Cam Ward's best game of the year. And that is the game Miami lost. So quarterback, complicated position. But yeah, McCord, he is a quarterback's quarterback. I think that former quarterbacks really like the guy.
His touch accuracy down the field is maybe the best in the class. And if you watch that game against Miami, it is on full display the entire game.
Yeah.
It is outside the numbers, down the sideline, in a basket, on a dime, the whole game. It's impressive. He, by the way, everyone talks about Cam Ward's production numbers. Kyle McCord had more against the same schedule in the same conference. I'm not saying he's better than Cam Ward. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying,
you did say it, but you're not actively saying it.
I'm not. He's not better than Cam Ward. But this is the point of the draft. Kyle McCord in the 5th, Cam Ward with the number 1 overall pick. Changes how you evaluate those two players in a big way.
No, I mean, I remember watching pre-draft coverage in like 2012, and somebody asked Mel Kiper, hey, you got Andrew Luck, you got RG3, you got Russell Wilson, Ryan Tannehill, all these quarterbacks in the class. Who's going to be the first one to win a playoff game? And without skipping a beat, he goes, Kirk Cousins, 5th round. Yeah. It's like, okay, sure. Yeah. That is probably the vibe we're getting from McCord. He'll be drafted lower, but he's going to start eventually. He's going to be a guy who plays in the NFL. Yeah.
I agree. People like Will Howard. I don't see the arm and the accuracy and the distribution the way I see it from McCord. Shuck, it's all there, but there's something off about it, and the injuries are a problem. I am kind of coming around on Jackson Dart being like Bo Nix. And Jackson Dart, if he fits into if he finds the right system and the right offense and the right scheme to maximize his skills, I think that could work in the NFL. I just think McCord has the most pro arm where it's accuracy and processing of almost anybody not named Cam Ward. So there you go. All right.
And
okay.
Just to respond to one last comment, Mr. Parlay Gambler, you've been fighting this straw man the entire draft as if or the entire show as if we're not talking about them picking Cam Ward. This entire show has been predicated on the idea, if they pick Cam Ward, what should they do next? The entire concept of this is based around Cam Ward. We are not advocating do not pick Cam Ward. We are sitting here saying, if they pick Cam Ward, what do you do next? That's been this whole show. So I am sorry if you have misinterpreted this as saying we would rather them have Kyle Monangai than Cam Ward. Obviously, having a 5th-round running back does not preclude you from using the number 1 pick on a quarterback. If we have misled you at all as an audience, I am sorry. I still think picking good players in the 1st round is better than picking mediocre players in the 6th round.
Tend to agree. And listen, I'm not going to judge you here, 14-leg parlay gambler. But if the name is any indication as to your habits, maybe consider changing the name. I don't know. I think 14-leg parlay gambler is not a great strategy for revenue stream. That's all. Like, should we take a running back? Should we take a Rutgers running back in the 1st round, Nick? What do we think?
I think that if you pair that with 13 other bets, it might hit.
Oh, that's funny. All right. All right. Thank you all for listening. The links to buy tickets to the Sinkers Beverages Shotgun Willie's Barbecue 3rd annual charity draft watch party podcast live stream event are live in the YouTube notes. The show notes there. They're also on the podcast app of choice if you are listening on that. So please go check that out. Tickets are very affordable, and every penny. I do not make a penny. Nick's not making anything. Sinkers doesn't make anything. Shotgun Willie's doesn't make anything. Nobody makes a penny on this. Every dollar goes to our kids. This is not all the proceeds, right? These events, when they say all the proceeds, we got to pay for all the materials for the shirts first. Then we'll sell the shirts. Then we'll give you the proceeds. No. It's not all the proceeds. It's every penny that is spent on this event will go to help sexually abused children in Middle Tennessee. So I can't think of a better that special thanks to Sinkers and to Shotgun Willie's Barbecue for being a part of that. Thanks to you and PK for being a part of that. Thanks to the Hot Read podcast for being a part of it as well. All you guys donating your time and your effort to a bunch of kids is fantastic, and it's what's great about Nashville. So thank you guys, and go buy some tickets, everybody. Can't wait to see you guys. Got a couple of weeks to go. Otherwise, go shop at Sinkers Beverages. Go shop at Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Have a great weekend, everybody. Go pay for good journalism at the Tennessean. For Nick, I'm Braden. We'll talk to you next time.